have installed Angular and have our IDE installation done, and we have successfully added our project into IDE. Now we'll dive into deeper by understanding the architecture of Angular. What is the approach of developing applications in Angular? So Angular apps are made up of 8 building blocks. These are the 8 building blocks that we frequently use while developing any Angular applications: modules, components, templates, metadata, data binding, directives, services, and dependency injection. So we'll see modules. Modules are building blocks of Angular and are defined using a decorator, that is @ng module. So this we call it as we call it as decorator, and we'll see this in the project. We open app module.ts. I'll have my font incremented. See, ng module, @ng module, and is decorated to a normal class of TypeScript. A class which is decorated with ng module is like a parent or container of many other classes that are decorated with @component, directives, injectable, pipes, and all that. So this is a normal class that got decorated with ng module, and we call this as a container module, wherein we list all other components, app component, the root component, and we have some modules given by Angular. We include all the modules, and providers is the array where you have all your services listed, and declarations, all components, directives, pipes is what we list in here. Angular apps are modular and has its own modularity system called ng module. So the decorator ng module is used to make normal TypeScript class into a module. Now I call this normal class as the root module, a normal TypeScript class into module. Angular apps have at least one module file, that is root module or app module, named as app.module.ts, and that's the file I've been talking about, app.module.ts, and which tells Angular how to assemble the app. So all my other parts of application, like as I said, components, directives, pipes, I list everything in this root module. Every component or every other section of my application needs to be registered in here. And you can create like custom modules can also be generated using this command ng. G stands for generate, m stands for module, and this is the module name, which doesn't get involved in the root module by default. So we'll have a separate session wherein we create our own module, and we'll see how we can get that integrated or registered with this root module. Decorator is applied to normal TypeScript class to add some extra info like decorations, imports, provide a bootstrap, exports. This all we'll see in a module. Declarations, imports, providers, bootstraps, and exports you'll see seen in feature module and not in root module. In root module you don't get to see exports, but when you create a custom module using this command, in that we get to see exports, and this all we'll see in detail when on the separate section of modules. Angular is rich in providing many modules like browser module, forms module, HTTP module, router module, etc. Again, all these modules we'll see when we learn forms, HTTP, and router. When we learn all these concepts, we'll be using all these modules given by Angular. For now, we use browser module by default, which is given in. So this is about modules. After modules, we'll see components. Component is what user gets to see, or everything that is seen on a template or view is actually divided into components. So in the official website of Angular, we took this as an example wherein we discussed like this is a component, navbar component, this is another component, this could be a component. So everything, a section, what you see, we call it as component. These are all can be termed as components. Due to components, Angular is also called as singular page applications, as they control a part of web page with which entire page refresh is avoided. So we don't have entire page refreshment with the help of placing components, and this can be considered as a component. Features is a component. All custom created components fall under app component, that is root component. So back again in the root module, this is the default component given by Angular when we create a project, and every component has 4 files. HTML is what we get to see. All this you get to see on the browser, and this is the TypeScript. What all you do the programming part will do it in TypeScript, and this is for testing, and this is the CSS file. So this applies for every component we create. And components are made up of 3 parts. If you see the TypeScript file, it is made up of 3 parts. The 3 parts are import. Keyword is used to import the component decorator from Angular core module. So we need an import keyword, and we import the component from Angular core module. Decorator. A TypeScript class is decorated, that is @component, to provide more info like selector, template URL and style URLs. So the decorator @component gives extra meaning to a normal TypeScript class. And what extra meaning does it give? It gives selector, template URL and style URLs. And for this component, the styles are done in appcomponent.css. This is the file. And for the same component, to render it on a browser, we need this HTML file. So what all we write in this HTML file will be rendered onto the browser, and we use app root to select this entire component by using this single term called as app root. This all we'll see in detail when we get started working with components. And in the next slide we'll have, so templates, like every component is associated with its template or view. It's the HTML file what we call as, and the technical term we use is templates. The templates are used to render component functionality on a web page. So what all programming you do on a component's TypeScript, to render it on the browser, we need to put it in HTML file, and what all you see in here is being rendered on the browser. Templates are more or less like HTML code or tags. So this is a simple HTML file. Metadata. The normal TypeScript class, if decorated, makes them behave in a different way. So these are all normal TypeScript classes, which is what I've been saying, but they have been decorated to provide some extra meaning or some extra functionality. Below are some of the decorations that can be applied to a normal class. So we saw @component. When it comes to services, we do @injectable. When it comes to directives, Angular creates @directive for a normal TypeScript class. Data binding, like for every page that you see, you have some information to be passed in from the keyboard and some information rendered as the output. See, I've given some information and it responded with some output. So this passing of some information and receiving some information, this is what we call as data binding. We are tying data to the HTML. Angular provides data binding or passing data from the view to the model in 4 ways: interpolation, property binding, event binding, and two-way data binding. This all we'll see in detail in a coming session. Directives. Angular provides directives that helps to add behavior or modifies the DOM as per the details given in the directives. So if you want to modify or add some extra information to the DOM, we use directives. Below are the types of directives available. Directive with a template, that is component, and the main difference between a directive and a component is component has HTML and CSS files to it because they have templates. For directives we don't have a view or a template, so we don't have HTML and CSS. And the other types of directives are structural and attribute. Services. A service is a special purpose class which is decorated as injectable. It contains some special functionality about the app. Functionalities like to get data or to log info. Services is used when a component wants to communicate with another component. It can pass data from one component to another component. As components are made to interact with the client, services interact with data and provide the data to components which are rendered to client and vice versa. When we want to get information some outer web service, services play a major role in getting information from a web service, and they provide it to the component, and again they receive information from a component and pass it to the service. So they play a mediator role between a web service and a component. Dependency injection. Angular is a dependency injection framework. So I'll mention components are dependent on service to render data on client, and dependency injection is to take care of the dependent or service objects and to inject them in components whenever required. So we'll have a separate session on dependency injection as well, because we'll be using dependency injection a lot. And the last one is the flow. Angular apps get their entry point from angular.json. So we'll open up angular.json. You can press Ctrl P and type in the file you want, angular.json. So this is the file. In this entry point, by considering the values given to keys like index and main. So these say, what do you see, index and main? Search for index. Yes, index and main. So these are the entry points. For the front end part it is index.html. For the TypeScript or backend part of this application would be the main.ts. Index.html is the only file that is used in the front end by placing all code in the bundled JS files. So these are the 5 package files, and is the entry point for the templates. Main.ts is responsible for starting our project, as it holds the first code to be executed, that is platform browser dynamic bootstrap module, and this is the root module that gets executed and is the entry point for the TypeScript. So we've been talking about app module, but from where does this app module gets started? And that is from main.ts. See, platform browser dynamic, and we are calling the root module, that is app module, and app module calls the app component, and app component as of now does not hold any custom components. In the coming session we'll create custom components and we'll attach them to the root component. But the flow is main.ts. From main.ts we get app module coming into picture. In app module we have the app component, that is the root component, and in root component for the moment we only have some ULs, li and images and all this. In here we'll place custom components. App module.ts boots the app as per the component listed in bootstrap, that is app component. So this says which component to get started with. Not only this, it lists all the features like component, service, directives and many other, and scans them. So We need all those listed in the declarations array and providers. So this is about the introduction of architecture of Angular applications. Continuing with the introduction of Angular, the last topic I would like to discuss is the structure of files and folders. If you see an Angular project, you see lot of files and folders available in here. You will see the most important files that we regularly use. We'll try to understand the need of those files and the directories that we have in an Angular project. If we begin with the first one, it's E2E, which stands for end-to-end testing. This directory is specially for testing purpose, and because we are not handling with any testing framework or anything that is related to testing in Angular, we won't be working much with this directory. Then comes node modules. Node modules is the biggest directory we have in entire Angular project. If you open up the folder where the project is created and see the properties size, it is 239 MB, or let us say 240 MB, and if I take up the size of entire project, it is also 240 MB. So the node modules will cover lot of space in a project, and rest other are quite simple and with very less space. Node modules is a directory in which we install all our dependencies, and it's a directory that is only for local machine purpose. We do not deploy or move node modules directly to production or even to a repository like GitHub. Only these files except node modules, rest other will be moved on to production and also the repository. If you see, the size of the directory is 400 KB. We can directly delete node module and it can be installed by running a command. I'll open up the command prompt and I'll simply say npm I or install. When you press enter, and you see the node modules directly will be launched. See? So this is how you create node modules directory as a local directory, but not for production purpose and not for repository purpose. It will take some time, and meanwhile we'll see. Source is a directory wherein we have all our source or code related files like app, and we'll see a bit more detail in this. Editor config, it is something related to configuration of editor. If you want to perform or some changes, it can be done in this file. Nothing related to application. Git ignore, see, node modules. This will be ignored when, if at all, I want to push all the code into Git repository. So what all I want to get ignored by Git, I'll mention them in this file. Angular.json, very important one. It deals with having all these global CSS files and global JS files. Like if at all we want to use jQuery in our project, then the CDN of jQuery is what we mention over here. The CDN of Bootstrap is what we can mention over here. And also the app, if you see, for a component like app component.ts, this particular thing can be changed. By default it is app, we can have our company name also. So this kind of configuration is possible in angular.json. And package log.json, another important files that we regularly work on. Package.json holds the list of all dependencies that we are in need of, and from this particular file, when we say npm I, the one that we tried just now, it will install all these dependencies that we need for an application to run. We need all these dependencies, and npm node package manager takes care of installing all these dependencies. If I install any dependency like bootstrap, I'll get to see an entry coming in bootstrap. We'll do the installation of bootstrap, and then we'll see bootstrap getting listed in this. And package.json, if you see, for any version in package, you see either caret or a tilde character. When you say caret, it takes changes in these two values, but when you say tilde, it takes change in this particular thing. Like when I want to install compiler CLI, the npm can take or does the installation like 61365 or 697, anything like that. This will remain the same, but anything related to these two, the latest one is what npm will pick up and do the installation. And if it is tilde, npm will do the latest of this one, and this we call as patch, minor and major. So tilde takes or does or picks the highest patch, and caret is for the highest in the patch and minor. Whereas package lock is the fixed one. If you see, you do not see any tilde or caret at all when it comes to the version. Like let us see what compiler CLI is in package log.json. 6.1.10 is the version that is installed in my current project, 6.1.0. Because it is a caret, I can accept a change in the minor and patch fix, but not to the major. And similarly, if you go for TypeScript is 272 fixed is what I've installed, and here again this could be the latest one. Let's see Angular CLI. You search for Angular CLI 608. You see, it's again the same, Jasmine. So these two are the things that are taken care by package.json and package-log.json. Package.json lists all the dependencies that we are in need of, and it gives a scope of the latest one that can be in minor and patch, but package lock holds the exact version that is installed. So these two are required and needs to be pushed into the repository. And if you see, there are dev dependencies and dependencies. Dev dependencies are something that we need only for development purpose, but dependencies for production also. When you want to deploy your application, you need these packages installed in the production also. Then comes source, which is the one where we will work a lot. App has all its application code related files and folders. Assets, all static data like images, video, sound, anything. Environment, the entire application environment is maintained in here. And fav icon, like when you run a browser, so this is the fav icon. Again, testing related. Main.ts is the point from where your execution gets started. Polyfills.ts holds information related to browsers, like Angular applications cannot be run in the older versions of Internet Explorer, but doing certain configuration in polyfill.ts, we can run an Angular application in CSS, global CSS. So these are the most common used files and directories in an Angular application.